I was sitting at Thanksgiving dinner, fork halfway to my mouth, when my sister Amber grabbed my phone off the table. Her wine glass crashed to the floor. The bank notification was still lit up on the screen. $65,300,000. Her face went white, then red. She screamed. Actually screamed. Dad froze with the turkey knife in his hand. Mom's smile vanished. Amber pointed at me, her hand shaking, and shouted that I'd been hiding a fortune while she struggled to pay her mortgage. The perfect family dinner shattered. Let me back up and explain how we got here, because this moment didn't come out of nowhere. It was the culmination of 35 years of being invisible in my own family. I'm Bruno. I grew up in a middle-class home in Ohio with my parents, Richard and Carol, and my younger sister, Amber. From the moment Amber was born when I was 5 years old, I became a background character in my own family's story. It started small. Amber got the bigger bedroom because she needed space for all her toys. I got the converted attic. She got the brand new bike for her birthday. I got hand-me-downs from cousins. But it wasn't just about material things. It was about attention, validation, love. When I was 10 years old, I won first place in the regional science fair. I'd spent 3 months building a working model of the solar system with motorized orbits. I was so proud. My parents didn't come to the awards ceremony because Amber had a piano recital the same day. She played 3 songs, made 2 mistakes, and got a participation ribbon. They threw her a celebration party. My trophy sat on a shelf in my room, and nobody ever asked about it. That same year, my birthday fell on a Tuesday. My parents forgot about it entirely because they were busy planning Amber's birthday party, which was 3 weeks away. When I reminded them that evening, Mom looked embarrassed and said we'd celebrate over the weekend. We never did. Amber's party had a bounce house, a magician, and 30 kids from her school. The pattern continued through middle school and high school. Amber got private music lessons, art classes, horseback riding, dance lessons. I asked for a microscope for my 13th birthday so I could do biology experiments. Dad said we couldn't afford it. 3 months later, Amber got a $1,500 violin. I started working at 14, bagging groceries at the local supermarket. I saved every penny. I bought my own school supplies, my own clothes, eventually my own beat-up car. When I turned 16, Amber was 14. She threw a tantrum because she wanted a car, too, even though she couldn't drive yet. My parents bought her a brand new sedan and told her she could start driving it when she turned 16. I'd saved for 2 years to buy my Honda Civic that had 200,000 miles on it. College was when the favoritism reached its peak. I got into MIT with a partial scholarship. I was thrilled, proud, determined. My parents sat me down and explained that they had a college fund, but it was for Amber. They'd been saving for her education since she was born. They suggested I take out loans or find more scholarships. I worked 3 jobs through college, took out $50,000 in student loans, and graduated with honors in computer engineering. Amber went to a state school 30 minutes from home. My parents paid for everything: tuition, room and board, spending money, a new laptop, textbooks, even her sorority fees. She changed her major 4 times, took 6 years to graduate, and barely passed most of her classes. At family dinners, all they talked about was Amber's college experience, her friends, her social life. Nobody asked me about MIT, about my research, about the groundbreaking work I was doing in artificial intelligence and medical diagnostics. My college graduation was on the same weekend. Amber needed help moving into her senior year apartment. My parents didn't come to my graduation. They sent a card with $50 in it. I walked across that stage at MIT, looked at the empty seats where my family should have been, and something inside me hardened. After college, I stayed in Boston. I took a job at a tech startup and spent every spare moment developing my own software. I'd identified a gap in medical diagnostic technology. Using artificial intelligence and machine learning, I created a program that could analyze medical images and detect early-stage diseases with 98% accuracy. I worked 20-hour days. I poured everything into that company. 5 years of blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Meanwhile, Amber got married to a guy named Tyler who sold insurance. My parents helped them with the down payment on a house, $30,000. They'd never offered me a cent. I didn't tell my family when my company started gaining traction. I didn't tell them when major hospitals began licensing my software. I didn't tell them when a massive healthcare corporation offered to acquire my company. The acquisition went through 18 months ago. After taxes and legal fees, I walked away with $65 million. I kept working. I stayed humble. I invested wisely. I lived in a nice, but not ostentatious apartment. I drove a regular car. I didn't want the attention, the questions, the inevitable requests for money, but I still came to family dinners. I still showed up for holidays. Some part of me, some stupid, hopeful part, thought maybe someday they'd see me. Really see me. Sesen. Lisen. Hausen. Some part of me. That brings us back to Thanksgiving dinner. I'd made the mistake of leaving my phone on the table when I went to help Mom in the kitchen. When I came back, Amber was holding it, staring at the screen, her face a mask of shock and fury. After she screamed and dropped the wine glass, there was a moment of absolute silence. Then everyone started talking at once. Amber was the loudest. She stood up, knocking her chair backward, and jabbed her finger at me. "You've been rich this whole time? You've had millions of dollars? And you never said anything? While I've been begging Mom and Dad to help with my mortgage payments?" Dad set down the carving knife very carefully. His expression had gone from shocked to calculating. "Bruno, how exactly do you have $65 million? I tried to stay calm. I started a tech company after college. I developed medical diagnostic software. The company was acquired last year." Mom's hand flew to her chest. $65 million? That's real money you have access to? "Yes, Mom. It's real." Amber's voice went shrill. "And you never thought to help your family? Your own sister?" "I've been struggling, Bruno. Tyler and I have been barely making our mortgage payments. And you've been sitting on a fortune?" I felt anger rising in my chest, but I kept my voice level. "Amber, I built that company from nothing. I worked myself half to death. I did it entirely on my own, without any help from anyone in this family." "We're family," she shouted. "You're supposed to help family." That's when she dropped the bomb that made everything so much worse. "Besides, it's not like I'm the only one who's needed help. Do you have any idea how much money I've borrowed from Mom and Dad over the years? Over $200,000. $200,000. They've been supporting me because they're good parents who help their children. They never had that kind of money to give, but they sacrificed for me. And you, with your millions, never offered them a single penny." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. $200,000? I turned to my parents. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. Mom was suddenly very interested in her napkin. "Is that true?" I asked quietly. "You've given Amber $200,000? Dad cleared his throat. "Amber's had some financial difficulties over the years. We wanted to help. Financial difficulties." I repeated the words slowly. "You gave her $200,000 for financial difficulties. The same $200,000 you didn't have when I needed help with college." "That was different," Mom said quickly. "You were always so independent, Bruno. You always figured things out. Amber needed us." The hypocrisy was staggering. I'd been independent because I had no choice. They'd made sure of that. Amber wasn't done. "You know what? I don't care about the past. What matters is that you have the ability to help this family now, and you're choosing not to. That tells me everything I need to know about what kind of person you are." She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. Tyler, who'd been silent throughout the entire confrontation, gave me an uncomfortable look and followed her. I stood up. "I think I should go too." "Bruno, wait," Dad said. There was something in his tone I'd never heard before, something almost desperate. "We do need to talk about this, as a family," but I was already walking out the door. Behind me, I heard Mom start crying and Dad trying to calm her down. I got in my car and sat there for a long moment, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The worst part wasn't the confrontation. It wasn't even the revelation that they'd given Amber $200,000 while telling me they couldn't afford to help me. The worst part was realizing that nothing had changed. Even now, even with proof of my success right in front of them, I was still invisible, still the problem, still the one who was somehow in the wrong. I drove home in silence, my phone already lighting up with text messages I had no intention of reading. I thought maybe avoiding my family for a few days would let things cool down. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to 47 missed calls and over 100 text messages. I scrolled through them with growing dread. Mom, Bruno, please call me. We need to talk about this like adults. Dad, your mother is very upset. This is not how family handles things. Amber, you're really going to just ignore us? Typical. Then came the extended family. Somehow, word had spread. Cousins I hadn't spoken to in 5 years were suddenly texting me. Aunts and uncles were calling. Even my grandmother left a voicemail asking if the rumors were true. I texted Mom back. I need some space. I'll call you in a few days. Her response came immediately. Your father is sick, Bruno. We need to talk now. My stomach dropped. Sick? What did that mean? Against my better judgment, I called her. Thank God, she answered on the first ring. Bruno, your father has something to tell you. We didn't want to bring it up at Thanksgiving because we didn't want to ruin the holiday. But now, with everything that's happened, you need to know. Dad got on the line. His voice sounded strained. Bruno, I've been diagnosed with a serious heart condition. The doctor says I need a specialized treatment. The surgery and follow-up care are going to cost about $350,000. Our insurance covers some of it, but not nearly enough. I felt the guilt hit me like a wave. My father was sick, seriously sick, and here I was, sitting on millions of dollars. How serious is it? I asked. Serious enough that I need the surgery within the next few months, or the prognosis isn't good. He paused. We were going to sell the house to pay for it. But now, knowing that you have the means to help, he trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. I need to think about this, I said. Think about it? Mom's voice went sharp. Your father could die, Bruno. What is there to think about? I just need a day to process everything. There's been a lot thrown at me in the last 24 hours. Fine, Dad said. But we'd like to have a family meeting tomorrow. Come to the house at 2 in the afternoon. We can discuss everything calmly and rationally. After I hung up, I sat on my couch and stared at the wall. My father was sick. That was real. That was serious. Everything else, all the old resentments and hurt feelings, seemed petty in comparison. I decided I would go to the meeting. I would hear them out. And I would help with Dad's medical bills. Because that was the right thing to do, regardless of our history. The next afternoon, I drove to my parents' house with a strange sense of foreboding I couldn't shake. When I walked in, I understood why. It wasn't just Mom and Dad waiting for me. Amber was there, sitting on the couch with her arms crossed. Tyler sat beside her, looking uncomfortable. And there was someone I didn't expect. Uncle Frank, Dad's older brother. Uncle Frank was a retired lawyer. Sharp, calculating, and not someone who got involved in family matters unless there was a reason. Bruno, glad you could make it, Dad said, gesturing to an empty chair. We wanted everyone here so we could discuss this as a family. I sat down slowly, my guard immediately up. I thought this was about your medical situation, Dad. It is, Uncle Frank interjected. But it's also about making sure we handle this properly, fair to everyone involved. Tyler pulled out his phone and set it on the coffee table, the camera facing me. I hope you don't mind, I'm just recording this for our records. To make sure we're all on the same page about what's decided. I do mind, actually, I said. Turn that off. It's just for family records, Tyler insisted. But he turned it off after Amber elbowed him. Mom brought out a folder from the kitchen and set it on the coffee table. Dad opened it, revealing several documents. We've put together a family support plan, Dad said. With Uncle Frank's help, we've outlined what we think is a fair way for you to help the family during this difficult time. I didn't like where this was going. A plan? Uncle Frank leaned forward. Bruno, you've been blessed with extraordinary financial success. Your family, meanwhile, is facing several crises. Your father's health, your sister's financial struggles, your parents' retirement concerns. It's only right that you, as someone with means, help support your family. I picked up the first document. It was neatly typed, professionally formatted, and laid out like a contract. The requests were listed in bullet points. $350,000 for Dad's heart surgery and treatment. $200,000 to reimburse Mom and Dad for the money they lent Amber, which they needed back for retirement. $150,000 for a family trust fund to help with future emergencies and needs. $50,000 for Mom's emotional distress and therapy costs related to family stress. Total, $750,000. I read it twice, feeling my anger build with each line. "You've got to be kidding me." "It's actually quite reasonable," Uncle Frank said. "Given your net worth, this represents barely 1% of your assets. For most people, that would be like donating a few $100s to charity. Except my family isn't a charity," I said. "And some of these items are absurd. $50,000 for Mom's emotional distress? $150,000 for a future trust fund? A trust fund that would benefit you too," Dad pointed out. "It's for the whole family. I don't need a trust fund. I have $65 million. Amber stood up. "That's exactly the attitude we're talking about. You got yours, so forget everyone else. You know what, Bruno? You might be rich, but you're poor in all the ways that matter. You have no loyalty, no compassion, no sense of family obligation. Amber, I earned this money. Every cent of it. I worked myself to exhaustion for 5 years. I took risks. I made sacrifices. Where were all of you when I was building that company?" "We were here," Mom said quietly. "We were your family. We raised you, gave you a home, fed you, clothed you. You wouldn't have any of this without us." I almost laughed at the irony. They gave me a home and food, the bare minimum required by law. They'd given Amber so much more. But pointing that out now would only make me look petty. "I'm happy to help with Dad's actual medical costs," I said carefully. "But I'm not signing anything, and I'm not giving anyone $750,000. Uncle Frank's expression hardened. "Bruno, I'd advise you to reconsider. There are legal avenues families can pursue when one member has means and refuses to help with essential needs like medical care, elder law, financial exploitation statutes. I'm not saying it would come to that, but you should be aware that you have a moral, and potentially legal, obligation here." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm informing you of your options and responsibilities." I stood up. "I'm not going to be manipulated or threatened. Dad, I'll pay for your medical treatment. The actual cost, not some inflated number. But the rest of this? No. I'm done here." I headed for the door, but Dad's voice stopped me. "Bruno, you're making a mistake. We're trying to be reasonable here." I turned back. "Reasonable? You ambushed me with a lawyer and a list of financial demands. You recorded me without my permission. This whole thing was planned before I even walked in the door." That's when I noticed something I'd missed before. The documents in the folder had a date stamp at the bottom. I walked back and picked up one of the papers. November 17th, 3 days before Thanksgiving. "These are dated from before Thanksgiving," I said slowly. "Before Amber accidentally saw my phone." Dad's face went pale. Mom suddenly couldn't look at me. "You knew," I said. "You already knew about the money before Thanksgiving, didn't you?" The silence was deafening. "How long have you known?" Amber bit her lip. Tyler studied his shoes. Uncle Frank cleared his throat. "How long?" I demanded. "About a month," Dad finally admitted. "I ran into Jacob Werner at the hardware store. Remember him? He works in venture capital now. He mentioned reading about your company's acquisition in the trade journals. He was impressed. Thought it was great that you'd done so well." I felt sick. "So, you've known for a month. You researched the acquisition. You looked up the details. You put together this whole plan with Uncle Frank. And then you staged the Thanksgiving confrontation to make it look spontaneous." "It wasn't staged," Mom protested weakly. "Amber really did see your phone, but you left my phone out on purpose. You asked me to help you in the kitchen at just the right time. You set it up so Amber would find it and create a scene where I couldn't just walk away. Nobody denied it. I looked at each of them in turn. My parents, who'd planned this manipulation. Amber and Tyler, who'd played their parts. Uncle Frank, who'd helped draft the legal documents. "You're my family," I said quietly. "You're supposed to be my family." "We are your family," Dad said. "That's why we're asking you to help." No, family doesn't plot and scheme and manipulate. Family doesn't ambush each other with lawyers. Family doesn't fake spontaneous outrage as part of a plan. I walked out of the house for the second time in 2 days. This time, I knew I wouldn't be coming back anytime soon. As I reached my car, I heard the front door open behind me. I turned to see Tyler standing on the porch, his hands in his pockets. "Bruno, wait." I stopped but didn't walk back toward the house. Tyler looked around nervously, then jogged over to me. When he got close, his voice was low and urgent. "Look, man, I didn't want to be part of this. But you need to understand something. Those numbers on that list? They're not what your parents said they were." "What do you mean?" "The 200,000 Amber borrowed from your parents? And the 350,000 for your dad's treatment? Those numbers are way inflated. I don't know the exact amounts, but I know they're padding everything. Why are you telling me this?" He hesitated. "Because Amber and I are in real trouble. Trouble that has nothing to do with your parents' money. And if you give them $750,000 based on lies, we're still going to be in that trouble, and it's going to blow back on everyone, including you." "What kind of trouble, Tyler?" But he was already backing away. "I've said too much. Just be careful, Bruno, please." He turned and walked quickly back to the house. I sat in my car for a long time before starting the engine. Tyler's warning echoed in my head. Real trouble. What did that mean? I made a decision. If my family was going to play games, I needed to know what I was really dealing with. I took out my phone and called a number I'd saved but never used. "Dawson Investigations," a woman answered. "Yes, I need to hire a private investigator. It's about my family. We can help with that." "What exactly do you need investigated?" "Everything," I said. "I need to know everything." The private investigator's name was Janet Reeves, and she came highly recommended by my corporate lawyer. She'd worked fraud cases for 20 years and specialized in financial investigations. I met her at her office in downtown Boston 3 days after the family meeting. "This won't be cheap," she warned me as we reviewed what I needed. "Family investigations require discretion and time. You're looking at around $20,000 minimum." "That's fine, I need the truth." She nodded and took notes as I explained everything. The lifetime of favoritism. The Thanksgiving ambush. The suspicious documents. Tyler's cryptic warning. She listened without judgment, her pen moving steadily across her notepad. "Give me 2 weeks," she said. "I'll get you answers." Those 2 weeks were torture. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting. My phone continued to blow up with messages from family members. The tone had shifted from angry to pleading. "Mom. Bruno, we miss you. Can't we work this out?" "Dad, I'm getting sicker, son. The doctors say I need to schedule the surgery soon." Amber had gone nuclear on social media. I didn't have Facebook, but my assistant showed me the posts. Amber had put out a vague message about family members who forget where they came from and people who value money over blood. It had gotten hundreds of comments and shares. People from our hometown were chiming in, speculating about who she meant. Then came the extended family pressure campaign. My cousin Derek called, trying to mediate. Aunt Patricia sent a long email about family values. Even my grandmother got involved, leaving tearful voicemails about how family was supposed to stick together. I ignored all of it and waited for Janet's report. She called on day 13. "I've got what you need. Can you come to my office this afternoon?" I was there within the hour. Janet spread documents across her conference table like a prosecutor laying out evidence. Financial records, medical bills, bank statements, printed emails. "Let's start with your father's medical situation," she said. "Richard does have a heart condition. That part is true. But the $350,000 treatment cost? Greatly exaggerated." She showed me the actual medical billing documents she'd obtained through legal channels. "The surgery he needs costs about $170,000 before insurance. His insurance will cover roughly $70,000. His actual out-of-pocket maximum is just under $100,000. Not $350,000. I felt anger and relief simultaneously. Dad was sick, but not as badly as they'd implied. And they'd tried to overcharge me by $250,000. What about the $200,000 Amber borrowed? Janet flipped to another set of documents, also inflated. Based on bank records and canceled checks, your parents lent Amber approximately $80,000 over the past 8 years. Not $200,000. So they're just lying about the amounts? It gets worse. Janet's expression darkened. Tyler has a gambling problem. A serious one. Online poker, sports betting, casino trips. Over the past 3 years, he's accumulated significant debt. She showed me printouts from various gambling sites, credit card statements, and emails from collection agencies. The numbers made my head spin. How much does he owe? Approximately $130,000. Some of it to legitimate institutions, but a significant portion to less savory characters. The kind of people who don't use lawyers to collect. My stomach turned. Does Amber know? Yes, and so do your parents. In fact, that's what this whole thing is really about. They need you to give them enough money to cover Tyler's gambling debts without you knowing that's what it's for. She pulled out email exchanges between Amber and her parents. I read them with growing disbelief. From Amber to Carol, dated 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. Mom, Tyler's in serious trouble. These people are threatening him. We need at least $130K. Can you ask Bruno? Carol to Amber. Your father and I will figure something out. Let me talk to Richard. Richard to Carol. We can't just ask Bruno for gambling money. He'll refuse. But he's wealthy now. Maybe we can present it as a family support plan. Something that seems reasonable. The email chain continued, laying out their entire strategy. They'd research Bruno's acquisition. Inflate Dad's medical costs. Pad Amber's loan amounts. Create a family trust fund as a cover. Make it look legitimate through Uncle Frank. Stage the Thanksgiving confrontation for maximum emotional impact. It had all been calculated, every single part. There's one more thing, Janet said quietly. She handed me a final document. This is a transfer record from your parents' bank account to Amber's account. $50,000 sent 2 days ago. 2 days ago? But they said they needed money back from Amber for their retirement. They lied. They're still giving her money. Money they probably don't have, based on their financial situation. Your parents are drowning trying to keep Amber and Tyler afloat. I leaned back in my chair, processing everything. My family wasn't just manipulative. They were running an elaborate con to get me to pay off Tyler's gambling debts without knowing that's what I was paying for. What do I do with this? I asked. Janet gathered the documents into a folder. That's up to you, but now you know the truth. Whatever you decide, you're making an informed choice. I paid her fee and left with the folder under my arm. The evidence felt heavy, like it carried the weight of every lie my family had told. That evening, I sat in my apartment and reread everything. The emails were the worst part. Seeing my parents discuss how to manipulate me in cold, calculated terms. Seeing Amber, coaching them on what to say. I decided I would confront them, but on my terms this time. No ambushes, no surprises. Just me and my father, face to face. I texted Dad. I need to talk to you. Alone. Tomorrow at your house. 2 p.m. Don't tell anyone else I'm coming. He responded within minutes. Of course, son. I'll be here. The next afternoon, I drove to the house I'd grown up in. It looked smaller than I remembered, more rundown. The paint was peeling in places. The lawn needed work. Signs of financial stress I hadn't noticed before. Dad answered the door with a weak smile. Bruno, I'm glad you came. Your mother's at her book club, so we can talk privately. We sat in the living room, the same room where they'd ambushed me with Uncle Frank. Dad looked older than he had a week ago, tired and worn. I hired an investigator, I said without preamble. I know about Tyler's gambling debts. I know your medical costs are inflated. I know about the emails planning the Thanksgiving setup. I know everything. Dad's face went through several expressions. Shock, fear, resignation. Finally, he sagged in his chair. You weren't supposed to find out, he said quietly. Clearly, Tyler's in real trouble, Bruno. Dangerous people, the kind who break bones to make a point. Amber came to us crying, begging for help. What were we supposed to do? She's our daughter. You could have told me the truth. Would you have helped if we did? I thought about it honestly. Probably not. Tyler made his choices. Exactly. That's why we couldn't tell you. But these people don't care about choices or consequences. They care about money. If Tyler doesn't pay, they'll hurt him. Maybe hurt Amber too. Maybe even come after us. So you decided to trick me instead. Dad's eyes welled up. I'm not proud of it. I'm sick, Bruno. Really sick. Maybe not as sick as we made it sound. But sick enough that I'm scared. And I'm scared for Amber and Tyler. I'm scared for your mother. I thought if we could just get the money without making it about Tyler's gambling, you'd help. And nobody would get hurt. You mean I wouldn't know I was being used? Yes, he admitted. That's exactly what I mean. The honesty, finally, was almost refreshing. I'll pay for your real medical costs, I said. The 100,000 you actually need. But I'm not paying Tyler's debts. And I'm not giving you any other money. Bruno, please. These people don't make idle threats. Then Tyler needs to face the consequences of his actions. And you and Mom need to stop enabling him. Dad's expression shifted from pleading to something harder. You're really going to let your sister's husband get hurt? Maybe let your sister get hurt too? You have the money to fix this. Bruno, what does 130,000 matter to someone with 65 million? It's the principle, Dad. Tyler's debts aren't my responsibility. Family is supposed to help each other. Family is also supposed to be honest with each other. Family isn't supposed to run elaborate cons on their own children. I stood up to leave. Dad remained seated, his face darkening. You're abandoning us in a crisis, he said. Don't think I'll forget this. Don't think any of us will forget. I'm setting boundaries. There's a difference. I walked toward the door, done with the conversation. But as I stepped outside, I heard car doors slam. Tyler was standing next to a black SUV in the driveway. Two large men flanked him, both wearing leather jackets and expressions that suggested violence was part of their job description. Tyler's face was pale, his eyes desperate. Bruno, wait. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you, Tyler. One of the men stepped forward. He was 6'4", heavily built, with a scar running down his left cheek. You're the rich brother, right? We've heard a lot about you. My heart started pounding. Who are you? Friends of Tyler's. Friends he owes money to. The man smiled, but there was no warmth in it. See, Tyler here has a debt that's due in 72 hours. We've been patient, very patient. But our patience has limits. The second man circled around to block my path to my car. Tyler says you can help with his little problem. Says you've got more money than you know what to do with. Tyler's debts are his problem, not mine. That's where you're wrong, the scarred man said. In our business, family debts are family debts. You've got the money. Tyler needs the money. Seems like a simple solution. I'm not giving you anything. Tyler grabbed my arm. Please, Bruno. I'm desperate here. These guys don't mess around. Just write a check, and this all goes away. I yanked my arm free. Let me go, Tyler. We're not going to hurt you, the scarred man said. Not today. But you should think real carefully about your choices. Bad things happen to people who don't help family when they can. Accidents. Break-ins. You've got a nice apartment in Boston, right? Be a shame if something happened to it. Are you threatening me? We're explaining reality. 72 hours, Bruno. After that, things get unpleasant for everyone involved. Including you. The two men got back in the SUV. Tyler gave me one last pleading look before climbing into the back seat. They drove away, leaving me standing in my parents' driveway with my hands shaking. I looked back at the house. Dad was standing in the window, watching. He'd known they were coming. This was another setup. Another attempt to pressure me. I got in my car and drove away with my mind racing. Tyler's gambling debts had attracted dangerous criminals. And now, those criminals saw me as an easy mark. A rich target who could solve their collection problem. I'd tried to set boundaries. I'd tried to protect myself. But instead of making the situation better, I'd somehow made it exponentially worse. My phone rang as I drove. It was an unknown number. "Is this Bruno?" a gruff voice asked. "Who is this?" "This is Detective Ray Martinez with Boston PD. Your name came up in an investigation. I think we should talk." My stomach dropped. "Investigation? What investigation?" "Extortion. Threats. Your brother-in-law Tyler is mixed up with some very bad people. And now it looks like they're targeting you." I pulled over to the side of the road, my hands gripping the steering wheel. Everything I'd tried to do to protect myself had backfired. Every boundary I'd set had been crossed. Every attempt to walk away had pulled me deeper in. And now the police were involved. "I'll come to the station," I said. "Can you meet me in an hour?" "Make it 30 minutes, Detective Martinez said. "These guys work fast, and we need to get ahead of this." I hung up and sat there for a moment, trying to process everything. In less than 2 weeks, my life had gone from successful and private to a nightmare of family manipulation and criminal threats. And somehow, I had a feeling it was about to get even worse. Detective Martinez was a broad-shouldered man in his mid-40s with tired eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. We sat in an interview room at the Boston Police Department while he reviewed notes on his laptop. "We've been tracking a loan shark operation for the past 6 months, he explained. "Tyler's name came up 3 weeks ago." "The guys who approached you today?" "They work for a man named Vincent Rossi. He runs an illegal gambling and lending operation out of a casino in Connecticut." "How much does Tyler really owe?" "About $130,000, according to our intelligence." "But here's the thing, Bruno. These guys don't just want the money, they want to make examples. They've been expanding their operation, and going after someone with your level of wealth sends a message to other debtors. So what do I do? File a formal complaint. We can build an extortion case. With your testimony and the threats they made, we can arrest them." I thought about it. My family was already a mess. Involving the police would create an entirely new level of complications. But what choice did I have? I couldn't live in fear of criminals. "Okay," I said. "I'll file the complaint." Martinez nodded approvingly. "Smart choice. We'll need you to write out everything they said. Describe the men. Document the threats." This might take a while. I spent the next 3 hours in that police station, writing out detailed statements, looking at photo arrays, documenting everything. By the time I left, it was after 8 at night. I felt exhausted and emotionally drained. When I got home, I found 17 new voicemails. Most were from family members, their tones ranging from pleading to angry. But one was from Amber, and her voice made my blood run cold. "Bruno, what did you do?" "The police just arrested Tyler." "They arrested him!" He called me from jail. "They're charging him with conspiracy to commit extortion." "This is your fault. You couldn't just help family like a normal person. So instead, you got my husband arrested. I will never forgive you for this. Never." I played the message twice, feeling a sick mixture of guilt and anger. Tyler had made his own choices. He'd brought criminals to threaten me. But Amber would never see it that way. The next morning, I woke up to a new nightmare. Amber had gone public. Her Facebook page had exploded with posts. She'd written a long, detailed narrative about how I, her wealthy brother, had refused to help our sick father, refused to help my struggling sister, and then had my brother-in-law arrested rather than simply write a check to help family. The post had been shared 3,000 times. Comments poured in by the hundreds. "What kind of monster does this to family? Money corrupts people. This is disgusting. I hope his father disowns him." Local news outlets picked up the story. I started getting calls from reporters wanting comments about the family dispute involving a tech millionaire and criminal charges. My professional life began to crumble. My company's board called an emergency meeting. They were concerned about the negative publicity. A major business deal I'd been negotiating fell through because the other company didn't want to be associated with the controversy. Colleagues at work treated me differently, some with sympathy, most with uncomfortable distance. My assistant fielded calls from media outlets daily. I felt like I was drowning. 3 days after Tyler's arrest, Mom called me. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Bruno, these men came to our house. Vincent Rossi's men. They said Tyler owes them money, and now that he's in jail, they want it from us. From me and your father. They said they know where Amber lives. They said they'll hurt us if we don't pay. Bruno, I'm terrified. My hands started shaking. Mom, did you call the police? Yes, they came and took a report. But the police said there's not much they can do unless the men actually do something. Bruno, we don't have $130,000. We barely have anything saved. What are we going to do? I felt the trap closing around me. Tyler's arrest hadn't solved the problem. It had made the criminals more desperate and more dangerous. Now they were going after my elderly parents. I'll figure something out, I heard myself say. Please hurry. They said we have until Friday. That's only 2 days. I hung up and paced my apartment, my mind racing. If I paid the gambling debt, I was rewarding the very behavior that had caused all of this. I'd be enabling Tyler and Amber, validating my parents' manipulation, and potentially making myself a target for future extortion. But if I didn't pay, my parents could be seriously hurt. That afternoon, I got a call from Dad. His voice was weak, strained. Bruno, I'm in the hospital. I had chest pains this morning. They think it's stress-related, but they're running tests. The doctor says I need to avoid stress or my condition could worsen dramatically. The guilt felt like a physical weight on my chest. My father was in the hospital. My mother was terrified. Amber's husband was in jail. Criminals were threatening my family. And all of it stemmed from my refusal to just pay the money. I called Detective Martinez. Is there any way to resolve Tyler's situation quickly? Get him to testify against these guys or something? He'd need to cooperate fully, provide evidence, testify in court. Even then, he'd be looking at some jail time for his involvement. And the process would take months, not days. Months? My family is being threatened right now. I understand, but the legal system moves slowly. Best thing you can do is make sure your family stays safe. Maybe they should stay somewhere else for a while. I wanted to scream at the uselessness of that advice. That evening, as I sat in my apartment trying to figure out what to do, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole and felt my heart stop. Amber stood in the hallway. Her face was bruised. She had a black eye and a split lip, dried blood on her chin. I threw open the door. Amber, what happened? She stumbled inside, crying. They grabbed me in the parking lot at the grocery store. 2 men. They punched me, shoved me against the car, said this was a message. They said if you don't pay Tyler's debt by Friday, next time will be worse. They said they'll go after Mom next. I helped her to the couch, got ice for her face, called for an ambulance despite her protests. Bruno, please, she sobbed. I know I've been awful to you. I know we manipulated you. I know we're terrible people. But Tyler's gambling got us into this, and now these men are going to hurt everyone. They don't care about right or wrong. They just want their money. Looking at her bruised face, I felt something inside me break. This wasn't about principle anymore. This was about keeping my family alive. I'll pay the debt, I said quietly. Relief flooded her face. Thank you. God, Bruno, thank you. But after this, I'm done. Completely done. I want nothing to do with any of you ever again. She nodded, still crying. I understand. I deserve that. We all deserve that. The ambulance came and took Amber to the hospital for examination. I called my lawyer and had him draw up legal documents immediately. If I was going to do this, I was going to protect myself legally. The next day, I arranged a meeting at my bank. Tyler was released on bail for the meeting, though he had to wear an ankle monitor. My parents were there. Amber was there, her face still swollen and bruised. My lawyer was there with a stack of papers. Here's how this works, I said, my voice cold and professional. I'm paying off Tyler's gambling debt. $130,000. I'm also paying for Dad's actual medical treatment. $100,000. Total payment, $230,000. I slid documents across the table. In exchange, you all sign these agreements. You acknowledge this is a one-time payment. You waive any future claims on my money. You agree to drop the lawsuit. You agree that after today, we have no further financial relationship. They all signed without hesitation. Tyler's hands were shaking so badly, he could barely hold the pen. I made the transfer to an account Tyler provided, supposedly held by Vincent Rossi's organization. The money left my account with a finality that felt like closing a door. It's done, I said. Amber reached for my hand. Bruno, I'm so sorry. For everything. I pulled my hand away. Don't contact me again. Any of you. I walked out of that bank feeling hollowed out. I'd just paid $230,000 to make my family's problems go away. I'd enabled Tyler's gambling, rewarded my parents' manipulation, and set a precedent that my money could solve any crisis they created. But at least it was over. Or so I thought. For 3 days, I felt something close to peace. I'd paid the money. My family had signed the agreements. Tyler's charges were still pending, but he was out of immediate danger. The threatening phone calls stopped. The men in black SUVs disappeared. I threw myself into rebuilding my professional reputation. I met with the board to assure them the family situation was resolved. I reached out to business contacts to repair damaged relationships. Slowly, carefully, I started putting my life back together. On the 4th day, Detective Martinez called me. Bruno, I need you to come to the station. Right now. Something in his tone made my stomach drop. What's wrong? Just come in. It's important. An hour later, I sat across from Martinez in the same interview room where I'd given my initial statement. This time, a woman in an FBI jacket sat beside him. This is Special Agent Lisa Chen, Martinez said. She's with the FBI's Organized Crime Unit. Agent Chen opened a laptop and turned it to face me. Mr. Bruno, do you recognize these men? On the screen were photos of the 2 men who'd threatened me in my parents' driveway. The ones who'd supposedly worked for Vincent Rossi. Yes, that's them. Tyler's debt collectors. Their names are Jake Sullivan and Marcus Grant. They're not debt collectors, they're actors. Community theater performers from Hartford, Connecticut. I stared at the screen, not understanding. Actors? We tracked down the supposed gambling operation, Martinez continued. Vincent Rossi exists, but he's a legitimate casino consultant with no criminal ties. The gambling debt, the threats, the intimidation, it was all staged. My mind refused to process what they were saying. Staged? Agent Chen pulled up more files. We've been investigating your family's finances as part of the extortion case. We found payments from your sister Amber to Jake Sullivan and Marcus Grant. Venmo transactions labeled as acting gig. We found emails between Amber and these men coaching them on what to say, how to act threatening. She showed me the emails. I read them in growing horror. From Amber to Jake Sullivan. Remember, you need to seem really dangerous. Mention his apartment. Make him feel unsafe. We need him scared enough to pay. From Marcus Grant to Amber. Got the leather jackets and the SUV rental. How much did you say this pays again? Martinez leaned forward. Tyler doesn't have significant gambling debts, Bruno. The whole thing was fabricated to manipulate you into giving them money. The debt collectors were fake. The threats were fake. But Amber was beaten. I saw her bruises. Agent Chen pulled up YouTube search history. Your sister spent 3 weeks watching makeup tutorials. Specifically, how to create realistic bruising and injury effects. We found the makeup supplies in her bathroom. Stage makeup, high-end theatrical prosthetics. I felt like the room was spinning. My parents, they were threatened too. Also fake. Your parents were in on the entire scheme from the beginning. The supposed visit from Rossi's men? Never happened. Your mother's terrified phone call? Scripted. Your father's stress-related hospitalization? He checked himself in for a few hours. Complained of chest pain, then left. The doctor found nothing wrong. Martinez slid a folder across the table. These are text messages between your family members, planning the entire operation. They researched how to manipulate you, identified your protective instincts as a weakness, and exploited them systematically. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The messages were damning. Dad to Amber, Bruno won't pay for gambling debts, but he might pay to protect family from violence. Amber to Mom, I'll need you to sell the Scared Mother act. Really play it up. Tyler to Dad, the actors cost $2K total. Worth it if we get $130K from Bruno. Mom to Amber, what about making you look beaten? Is that too far? Amber to Mom, he needs to feel guilty enough to pay. A few fake bruises are nothing compared to what we'll get. I read every message, feeling something fundamental break inside me. This wasn't just manipulation. This wasn't just favoritism or financial pressure. This was elaborate, calculated fraud. They'd run a con on me, using actors, fake threats, staged injuries, fabricated emergencies. How much of it was real? I asked numbly. Was any of it real? Martinez consulted his notes. Your father does have a heart condition, but it's mild and well controlled with medication. The treatment he needs costs about $60,000, most covered by insurance. He's not in any immediate danger. The $200,000 they claimed Amber borrowed was actually about $50,000. Tyler has some gambling issues, but nothing extreme. No dangerous debts. So the entire crisis was manufactured. Yes, they identified your wealth as an opportunity. When the Thanksgiving confrontation didn't immediately get them money, they escalated with increasingly dramatic scenarios designed to exploit your guilt and fear. Agent Chen closed her laptop. Mr. Bruno, we're charging your family members with conspiracy to commit fraud, extortion, and theft by deception. The evidence is overwhelming. They'll likely face significant jail time. You paid them $230,000, Martinez said. That money is recoverable through criminal restitution and civil action, but it's going to be a long process. I sat there, unable to speak. My family hadn't just betrayed me. They'd run a criminal enterprise targeting me. They'd hired actors. They'd faked injuries. They'd fabricated a months-long conspiracy to steal my money. And I'd believed them. I'd felt guilty. I'd paid. What happens now, I asked. We'll arrest them today. All 4 of them. This is a federal case due to the wire transfers and conspiracy across state lines. They'll be arraigned, likely held on bail. The trial will probably be in 6 to 8 months. I nodded numbly. Do whatever you need to do. That evening, the arrests made national news. Not just local coverage, but national. CNN, NBC, all the major outlets picked up the story. Tech millionaire defrauded by own family in elaborate scheme. My name was everywhere. Photos of Amber in handcuffs. Video of my parents being led out of their house by FBI agents. Tyler's mugshot. And my face. Blown up on screens across the country. The media narrative wrote itself. How could someone with $65 million be scammed by his own family? My phone exploded with calls from journalists, talk show producers, podcast hosts. Everyone wanted an interview, a statement, an explanation. My company's board called another emergency meeting. This time, the tone was different. Concerned wasn't the right word. Worried about liability was closer. The board chair, a stern woman named Patricia Davidson, didn't mince words. Bruno, this situation has spiraled beyond personal family drama. The media attention is affecting our company's reputation. Investors are asking questions. Partners are reconsidering relationships. My family committed fraud against me. I'm the victim here. Yes, but the optics are complicated. You're seen as someone who couldn't protect himself from his own family. That raises questions about judgment, about vulnerability to manipulation, about whether you're a liability to this company. My jaw dropped. Are you seriously blaming me for being defrauded? We're saying that perception matters in business. And right now, the perception is that you're a security risk. They voted to remove me from operational leadership. I'd retained my shares and my board seat, but I was out as an active executive. The company I'd built, the work I'd sacrificed everything for, pushed me aside because my family had betrayed me. Over the next week, the professional damage compounded. A major deal fell through. 2 business partners quietly distanced themselves. Colleagues treated me with a mixture of pity and suspicion. The public reaction was split but brutal. Some people sympathized, seeing me as a victim. Others mocked me as naive, gullible, someone whose wealth couldn't protect him from his own stupidity. Social media tore me apart. Memes about being scammed by your own family circulated widely. I became a cautionary tale, a punchline, a symbol of whatever narrative people wanted to push. I stopped reading the news. I stopped checking social media. I stayed in my apartment, ordered food delivered, and tried to process the fact that my entire life had imploded. The money wasn't the worst part. $230,000, while significant, was less than 1% of my net worth. I'd recover financially. The worst part was the trust, the realization that my entire family, my parents, my sister, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, had conspired to defraud me, had hired actors to threaten me, had faked injuries to manipulate me, had planned every detail of my emotional exploitation. They'd known exactly how to hurt me, exactly which buttons to push, exactly how to make me feel guilty enough to pay. And they'd done it with calculation and cruelty that took my breath away. 2 weeks after their arrests, I got a call from my lawyer. "Bruno, your mother wants to talk to you. She's asking if you'll visit her." "Absolutely not. She claims she's sick. Something about heart palpitations and stress. She's in the hospital." I almost laughed at the bitter irony. Another fake emergency? The hospital confirmed she's there. But her condition appears to be anxiety-related, not life-threatening. "Tell her I'm not coming. Tell her I never want to hear from her again." My lawyer paused. "There's something else. The prosecutor offered your family a plea deal. If they plead guilty and agree to full restitution, they'll get reduced sentences. Probation for your parents due to their age, maybe a year or two for Amber and Tyler. What do you think I should do?" "That's not my decision, but I'll tell you this. If they go to trial, the evidence is so overwhelming they'll likely get much harsher sentences. Your testimony would guarantee convictions. On the other hand, if you push for maximum punishment, the media circus will continue. More interviews, more coverage, more public dissection of your family's betrayal." I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted them to face the full consequences. Part of me just wanted it to be over. "I'll agree to the plea deal on one condition," I said. "They allocate full restitution, they stay out of my life permanently, and they sign agreements never to speak publicly about me or this situation. I'll communicate that to the prosecutor." The plea deal went through. Amber and Tyler got 18 months and 12 months respectively. My parents got probation and community service. They all got permanent criminal records. All their assets were seized to pay restitution, including my parents' home. I won. Legally speaking, they faced justice. I'd get my money back eventually, but as I sat in my apartment, watching news coverage of the sentencing, I didn't feel like a winner. I felt destroyed. My family was gone. My professional reputation was in tatters. My sense of trust and humanity was shattered. I'd been right about their manipulation, but being right didn't bring me peace. It just brought me loneliness. I was at my lowest point, having exposed the people who were supposed to love me, watching them face consequences for their betrayal. But somehow, through the wreckage, I was about to discover that losing everything toxic in my life was the first step toward finding something real. For 2 weeks after the sentencing, I didn't leave my apartment. I ordered groceries delivered, worked from home on minimal projects, and avoided all human contact beyond what was absolutely necessary. My lawyer called regularly with updates on the restitution process. Detective Martinez checked in to see how I was holding up. My assistant forwarded business matters that couldn't wait. But otherwise, I was alone. I spent a lot of time thinking about my life. 35 years of trying to earn my family's approval. Decades of believing that if I just succeeded enough, accomplished enough, made enough money, they'd finally see me as valuable. The irony was crushing. They'd only seen me as valuable once I had money. And then that value was purely transactional. I wasn't a son or a brother. I was a resource to exploit. On day 15 of my isolation, my assistant called with an unusual request. "There's a woman here who wants to meet with you. She says it's personal, not business. Her name is Sarah Mitchell. She's a therapist who specializes in family trauma and manipulation." I almost said no. But something in my assistant's tone suggested I should take the meeting. Send her up. Sarah Mitchell was in her early 50s, with kind eyes and a calm presence. She sat in my living room and got straight to the point. Mr. Bruno, I've been following your case in the news. I work with survivors of family manipulation, financial abuse, and toxic family systems. What happened to you is more common than people realize, though usually not on such a dramatic scale. Why are you here? Because I recognize the pattern. You're isolated, blaming yourself, probably wondering what you did wrong. And I'm here to tell you that none of this was your fault. Those words hit me harder than I expected. I felt tears burning in my eyes. I should have seen it coming. I should have known they were lying. They were your family. You're supposed to be able to trust family. The betrayal isn't on you, it's on them. We talked for 2 hours. Sarah helped me understand the psychology of family manipulation, the specific tactics they'd used, the ways they'd exploited my sense of obligation and guilt. You spent your whole life seeking their approval, she said. That's not weakness, that's human. Every child wants to be loved by their parents. The tragedy is that some parents see that need as something to exploit rather than something to nurture. Before she left, she handed me her card. I run support groups for people who've escaped toxic families. People who've been financially exploited, emotionally manipulated, scapegoated. You might find it helpful to talk to others who understand what you've been through. I went to my first support group meeting 3 days later. It was in a community center in Cambridge, 12 people sitting in a circle, sharing stories that sounded eerily similar to mine. A woman named Jennifer talked about her parents draining her trust fund through a series of manipulated investments. A man named Robert described how his siblings had run up credit cards in his name and destroyed his credit. Another woman, Lisa, explained how her family had used her as an emotional and financial caretaker for decades while favoring her brothers. Listening to their stories, I realized I wasn't alone. I wasn't stupid or naive. I was one of many people who'd been victimized by the people who were supposed to protect them. More importantly, I saw that these people had survived. They'd rebuilt. They'd found peace. After the meeting, Robert approached me. "You're the guy from the news, right? The tech millionaire?" I braced for judgment, but he just smiled sadly. "Man, I'm sorry. That level of public betrayal must be hell. But you did the right thing pressing charges. Most of us never get justice. We just walk away and try to heal. I don't feel like I got justice. I feel like I lost everything. You lost people who were hurting you. That's not a loss. That's freedom. You just don't recognize it yet." His words stayed with me. Over the next few weeks, I started engaging with the world again. I went to Sarah's therapy sessions twice a week. I attended the support group. I reached out to old friends I'd neglected during my isolation. One of those friends, a former MIT classmate named David Park, invited me to dinner. "I've been worried about you," David said over Thai food in downtown Boston. "I saw all the news coverage. That situation with your family was insane. It was a nightmare. But you exposed them. You stood up for yourself. That took guts." I'd been seeing the situation as a humiliating defeat for so long that hearing someone frame it as courage felt strange. The media made me look like an idiot who couldn't even protect himself from his own family. The media loves a dramatic story. But the people who know you, who understand business and family dynamics, we see something different. We see someone who had the strength to walk away from toxic people, even when they were family. That's rare. David introduced me to his wife, Emma, and their 2-year-old daughter. Watching them interact, seeing what a healthy, loving family actually looked like, I felt a pang of loss for something I'd never had. But I also felt hope. These relationships existed, just not in my bloodline. 3 months after the arrests, I got a call from a business magazine requesting an interview. My first instinct was to refuse, but my new therapist encouraged me to consider it. "Controlling your narrative might help with closure," Sarah suggested. "You've let others tell your story. Maybe it's time to tell it yourself." I agreed to one interview. Just one. The journalist, a woman named Rebecca Lawson, came to my apartment with a photographer. She asked thoughtful questions about my childhood, the favoritism, the elaborate fraud, the aftermath. "What do you want people to understand about what happened to you?" she asked. I thought carefully before answering. I want people to understand that family abuse isn't always physical. It can be emotional, financial, psychological. And just because someone is blood-related doesn't mean they have your best interests at heart. I spent 35 years trying to earn love from people who saw me as a resource, not a person. Breaking away from that, even though it meant exposing them publicly, was the healthiest thing I could have done. The article ran 2 weeks later. The response was overwhelming. Thousands of messages from people sharing their own stories of family manipulation. Support from survivors. Understanding from people who'd been through similar situations. The narrative shifted. I wasn't the naive millionaire who got scammed anymore. I was a survivor who'd fought back. My company's board took notice. Patricia Davidson called me personally. "Bruno, the board has been discussing your situation. We made a hasty decision removing you from leadership. The public response to your interview has been remarkable. We'd like to reinstate you, if you're interested." "Why now?" "Because we realize we misjudged the situation. You weren't a liability. You were dealing with an extraordinary betrayal with grace and strength. That's exactly the kind of character we want leading this company." I considered it. The company was mine, built from my ideas and my work. But did I want to go back to that world? I need time to think about it. Take all the time you need. What I discovered over the following months was that my wealth, my success, all the things I'd worked so hard to achieve, they mattered less than I'd thought. What mattered was being surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them. I started using my money differently. I funded Sarah's nonprofit organization that helps survivors of family financial abuse. I created a scholarship program for students who, like me, had to work their way through college without family support. I invested in therapy and healing, both for myself and for others. My company went through changes too. I accepted the board's offer to return, but on my terms. I focused on work-life balance, on building a company culture based on genuine respect rather than exploitation. And slowly, carefully, I started building a chosen family. David and Emma became close friends. I met others through the support group who understood my experience. I dated someone I met at a charity event, a woman named Catherine, who came from a loving, supportive family and helped me understand what healthy relationships looked like. 6 months after the sentencing, my mother tried to contact me. My lawyer forwarded a letter she'd written from her sister's apartment, where she was living after losing the family home. The letter was long, filled with apologies and explanations. She claimed she'd been desperate, that she'd made terrible mistakes, that she hoped someday I could forgive her. I read it once, then filed it away. Maybe someday I'd be ready to forgive. But not now. Not when I was finally learning what peace felt like. A year after everything fell apart, I stood in front of 200 people at a conference on family trauma and financial abuse. I'd been invited to speak about my experience, to help others recognize manipulation and find the courage to walk away. For most of my life, I believed family was everything, I told the audience. I believed that blood ties meant unconditional love, that parents and siblings would always have your back, that no matter what, family came first. I was wrong. I looked out at faces nodding in understanding, people who'd lived through their own versions of my story. Family isn't DNA. Family is how people treat you. Family is respect, trust, genuine care. The people who raised me never gave me those things. They gave me a lifetime of being second best, followed by an elaborate fraud designed to steal from me. But here's what I've learned. Walking away from toxic people, even if they're blood relatives, isn't abandonment, it's self-preservation. It's choosing your own well-being over their manipulation. And most importantly, it's opening space in your life for people who will love you authentically. The applause that followed felt like validation. Not for being rich or successful, but for surviving and helping others do the same. After the speech, dozens of people came up to share their stories, to thank me for speaking openly, to tell me they felt less alone. One woman, probably in her 60s, gripped my hand tightly. "My children have been financially abusing me for years. Hearing your story gave me the courage to cut them off. Thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth." That's when I realized what I'd gained from everything I'd lost. I'd lost a toxic family who'd never valued me, but I'd gained a purpose, a community, and most importantly, freedom from the burden of seeking approval from people who were incapable of giving it. The criminal cases wrapped up. I recovered most of my money through restitution. My company thrived. My personal life grew richer with genuine connections. And I never heard from my blood family again, which, I finally understood, was exactly what I needed. 2 years after that Thanksgiving dinner that changed everything, I sat in my new office overlooking Boston Harbor and reflected on how completely my life had transformed. The money had always been there. The $65 million had grown to over $80 million through smart investments and business growth. But wealth, I'd learned, was the least interesting thing about my story. What mattered was that I'd finally become the person I was meant to be, free from the weight of seeking validation from people who would never give it. The civil case against my family concluded with full restitution. I recovered the $230,000 they'd stolen, plus damages. The judge's ruling was scathing, documenting in legal language what I'd known emotionally. My family had run a calculated criminal conspiracy targeting me specifically because they believed I'd be too guilty and too desperate for their approval to fight back. They'd been wrong. Amber and Tyler served their sentences. Last I heard through my lawyer, they'd divorced shortly after her release. She was living in a different state, working retail, trying to rebuild a life from nothing. I felt no satisfaction in that knowledge, but I also felt no guilt. My parents' retirement was destroyed. The house I'd grown up in was sold to pay restitution. They moved in with Mom's sister in Florida. Dad's heart condition was managed with medication and lifestyle changes. He was fine, just as I'd suspected when I saw through their manipulations. They tried to contact me twice more. Once through a third-party relative who tried to broker reconciliation. Once through a lawyer, asking if I'd consider helping them financially in their elderly years. I said no both times, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. They'd proven who they were. I believed them. My professional life rebounded in ways I never expected. Returning to the company as CEO, I implemented changes that reflected the lessons I'd learned. We created an employee assistance program that included therapy for family issues. We established clear boundaries about work-life balance. We built a culture where people were valued for their contributions, not exploited for their productivity. The company's reputation actually improved from the controversy. We were seen as a place that cared about the whole person, that understood real-world struggles, that was led by someone who'd faced adversity and come out stronger. The business deals that fell through during the crisis, they were replaced with better ones. Partners who distanced themselves were replaced with better partners. I learned that the people who abandoned me during my hardest time weren't the people I wanted in my life anyway. My personal life bloomed in ways I'd never imagined possible. Catherine and I got engaged 6 months ago. Meeting her family, seeing how parents could actually support and celebrate their children unconditionally, was revelatory. Her parents treated me like a son from the beginning. They celebrated my successes without trying to profit from them. They supported me during difficult days without expecting anything in return. That's what family was supposed to be. The support group Sarah introduced me to became a central part of my life. I still attended monthly meetings, sharing my ongoing journey and learning from others. I became a mentor to newcomers, helping them navigate the difficult process of setting boundaries with toxic family members. The foundation I established to help survivors of family financial abuse grew beyond anything I'd imagined. We'd helped over 500 people escape manipulative situations, provided therapy funding for thousands more, and created legal resources for victims pursuing justice. That work became my passion. More than the tech company, more than the wealth, more than any professional achievement, helping others break free from toxic family systems gave my life meaning. I spoke publicly about my experience regularly. Podcasts, conferences, interviews, workshops. Every time I shared my story, I heard from dozens of people who'd experienced similar situations. The epidemic of family manipulation was far more widespread than anyone acknowledged. But what I emphasized in every talk was the same message. You can survive. You can rebuild. You can find genuine love and connection with people who see your worth. The most profound shift was internal. I no longer measured my value by whether my family approved of me. I no longer carried the burden of their favoritism and rejection. I'd grieved the family I wished I'd had, and accepted the reality of the family I actually had. And then I'd walked away and built something better. David and Emma's daughter called me Uncle Bruno. I was part of their family traditions, their holidays, their everyday lives. Not because of obligation or blood, but because of mutual care and respect. I had friends who checked on me during hard days, colleagues who valued my input, a fiancé who loved me for who I was, not what I could provide, a community of survivors who understood my journey. I'd lost a toxic family and gained an authentic life. The final legal chapter closed on a cold morning in March. My lawyer called to confirm that all restitution had been paid, all legal matters were resolved, all connections were officially severed. "You're completely free of them now," he said. "No more legal ties, no more financial obligations, nothing. It's over." "Thank you," I said, "for everything." After I hung up, I sat quietly for a moment. Then, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened the box where I kept my childhood belongings. The science fair trophy from when I was 10, my MIT diploma, photos of myself at various ages, always standing slightly apart from my family, always with a forced smile. I looked at that lonely kid and wished I could tell him what I knew now. You're enough. You always were. Their inability to see your worth says everything about them and nothing about you. And someday, you'll build a life so full of genuine love that their rejection will feel like the gift it actually was. I closed the box and put it back in storage. Not to forget, but to acknowledge and move forward. That evening, Catherine and I had dinner with David, Emma, and their daughter. We laughed, shared stories, made plans for the summer. Nobody mentioned my family drama. It wasn't relevant anymore. It wasn't who I was. As I looked around that table at people who genuinely cared about me, I realized something profound. I'd spent 35 years chasing approval from people who would never give it. And in losing them, I'd found everything I'd actually been searching for. I thought about that Thanksgiving dinner 2 years ago, when Amber saw my bank balance and everything exploded. At the time, it felt like my life was ending. But really, it was just beginning. Now, let me share what I learned from this entire experience, because maybe it'll help someone else who's facing a similar situation. Blood doesn't make family. Behavior makes family. The people who raised me taught me that lesson in the hardest way possible. But it was a lesson I desperately needed to learn. For decades, I stayed in a toxic relationship with my family because I believed I was supposed to. Because society tells us that family is forever, that we owe our parents everything, that sibling bonds are sacred. But none of that is true if the relationship is built on manipulation, favoritism, and exploitation. I kept showing up to dinners, kept hoping they'd change, kept believing that if I just succeeded enough, they'd finally see me as worthy. But the truth is, people who are determined not to value you will find reasons not to value you no matter what you achieve. The favoritism wasn't about me being less than Amber. It was about my parents' own issues, their own preferences, their own flawed perspectives. I could have cured cancer, and they still would have found Amber's mediocre achievements more impressive. Understanding that freed me. Not immediately, but eventually. The money was never the real issue. $230,000, while significant, was less than 1% of my wealth. The real issue was the trust, the betrayal, the realization that the people who were supposed to protect me saw me as nothing more than a resource to exploit. Walking away from them, exposing their fraud, pursuing justice. Those were the hardest things I've ever done. Harder than building a company. Harder than working 3 jobs through college. Harder than anything. Because it meant accepting that the family I'd always wanted never existed and never would. But on the other side of that acceptance was peace. I learned that it's okay to choose yourself over people who are hurting you, even if they're family. Especially if they're family. Because staying in toxic relationships out of obligation doesn't make you noble. It makes you a victim. I learned that genuine relationships, the kind built on mutual respect and authentic care, feel completely different from obligatory family connections. The difference between trying to earn someone's approval and being valued simply for existing is night and day. I learned that speaking your truth, even when it's ugly and public and humiliating, is better than suffering in silence. The thousands of messages I received from people saying my story helped them find courage to leave their own toxic families made every embarrassing headline worth it. Most importantly, I learned that losing everything toxic in your life isn't loss. It's liberation. I'm not angry anymore. I don't wish harm on my parents or Amber. I simply wish them nothing, because they're no longer part of my life in any meaningful way. And I'm okay with that. Better than okay, I'm happy. I'm surrounded by people who celebrate my successes without resenting them, who support me during failures without exploiting them, who love me for who I am rather than what I can provide. I'm building a life based on authenticity rather than obligation. And I'm finally, after 35 years, at peace. If you're reading this and seeing yourself in my story, if you have family members who manipulate you, who favor others over you, who make you feel worthless unless you're useful to them, I want you to know, you can walk away, you can set boundaries, you can choose peace over toxicity. It won't be easy. People will judge you. They'll say you're selfish, that you're abandoning your family, that you'll regret it. Let them talk. Their opinions don't pay your therapy bills or heal your wounds. You deserve to be valued. You deserve to be loved authentically. You deserve relationships that add to your life rather than drain it. And sometimes, getting those things means walking away from the people who were supposed to give them to you in the first place. That's not betrayal. That's survival. That's choosing yourself. And there's no greater gift you can give yourself than that choice. I'm Bruno. I survived my family's betrayal, rebuilt my life on my terms, and discovered that the family you choose is often far better than the family you're born into. My parents favored my sister my entire life. Then she found out I had $65 million and tried to manipulate me into giving it to her. They all did. And I said no. Best decision I ever made. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic family members? How did you find the strength to choose yourself over obligation? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming adversity and finding strength in difficult situations. And share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to set boundaries with family. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you find the courage to write your own ending. One where you choose peace, authenticity, and relationships that truly value you. Remember, you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not selfish for wanting to be treated with basic respect and kindness. You're human, and you deserve so much better than people who see you as nothing more than a resource. Choose yourself. Choose peace. Choose freedom. You won't regret it. Take care of yourselves out there. And remember, the best revenge is living well and finding genuine happiness. Thanks for watching.